Hi, I'm Vanessa Wishstar,
And I'm Steve Wishstar.
and we are the Wishstar Dream Team. Again, it's 5 something in the morning. All right, so today's podcast, I guess,
Is again another continuation of the last half hour of our talk that we've just been having with ourselves.
that we forgot to hit record. So we were thinking of, we were talking about why. So let's first back up a little bit of where are we?
Oh, we are in Florida.
Yeah, so following probably the previous podcast, which was about intuitively led, if you've listened to that, it's about us having a switcheroo of the universal intelligence of where we're being led and what we're, I guess, supposed to be doing, which was really scary and and good and great, but definitely outside our comfort zone. Financially, everything.
So yeah, we're down here in Florida because we had to separate ourselves from Alaska for a little while.
For our own healing.
For our own healing, yep. And we are trying to figure out what our primary residency is going to be doing up in Alaska. And in the meantime, we had discovered a opportunity here in Florida to get a secondary residence, for the winters. And it took a big leap of ours to kind of decide, are we those kind of people? And what does those kind of people mean to be, wintering in one place and summering in another place?
And if we even want that. Because what we wanted was to live in Haines. That was our ultimate, but that's not what was showing up any longer.
And so this morning we actually started talking about what's bringing us back to Haines? What are we missing? What does Haines have? And we kind of know these answers, but we wanted to but we didn't know them, or we were trying to define them, I should say.
Yeah, and we were thinking about asking the people of Haines, what is it that brings you back, especially for us. I mean, we don't have anything there. Usually you have a house or you have something there, and we don't have anything. And we've been really stripped raw. But for us, there's just this constant pull of it's home. It's our home. It's not, even though we don't have a home.
And it's kind of like you just mentioned something like, our first 2 summers in Alaska, we didn't have a home. That was before we bought our house. We had an RV and a fifth wheel, and we were, but we had that feeling that was still home. What kept bringing us back then? Because whenever we came back to Colorado from being in the RV or fifth wheel, whatever, we always wanted to be back in Alaska. We just felt like, we're going back to Colorado just, for temporary, because that's where our house was. But we always, had the excitement of the return to Alaska. We always had.
Yeah, it was painful to go back to Colorado.
Right, yeah. Even though Colorado was home for 20 years.
Yeah, and it was amazing and beautiful and everything you could dream of, but
we
still
outgrew
it. We outdreamed it.
Yeah, outdreamed it. But we still had that feeling like we wanted to go back to Haines. And so, after a trauma of a landslide, it's kind of, we're trying to rediscover that right now, because we did have a house and we did have a dream, because of that house. And it wasn't just like dream, I guess, but we had a path that we wanted to take. And so that path that we wanted to take has now been, erased. And so we have to, find a new path or whatever. But just to circle back, we've got this second place in Florida because we decided, that
Well, we had to.
we had to, but we had to not only logistically, like, we need a place to stay, but we also determined that
Yeah,
it's
this
okay.
was our recharge. This
Yeah.
was our recharge button. And when you live in Haines or in Alaska in general, especially remotely in the way that we do, you need a recharge. You just do. Like, that's a fundamental fact. And I don't think that many people realize that. I mean, probably, maybe let's just say, many people, meaning us, do not realize that. Maybe a lot of people actually do. But we were kind of shocked by that. That, even let's say we weren't in a landslide and all this didn't happen, I think there would have been it would have been a lot slower of a process. But that's when I think a lot of people, it's not just getting stir crazy or stuff like that. It wears on you. It's a hard environment, and you need a reset. There's little light. There's a lot of rain. So even if you do have light, which is, from 9 to 3, you might not actually have light, so your vitamin D levels plummet, and just your sanity. And even that, is not like, I didn't feel it was too bad, but I'm wondering now that I'm out of that situation, I didn't realize it was so bad for me. I didn't realize that I needed as much sunshine as I do, and that also kind of depressed me because I felt kind of overcome by it. Like, it's like yet another body need that I have to address, and I can't be tough enough or whatever. So there's a lot of our own judgments of, and everybody in Alaska goes through that, it's all different, but yeah. So what we were talking about is, well, everybody in the lower 48 can't understand why. And they always ask us, why go back? Why do you want to live there? Because we talk about
how hard it is all the time.
Yeah, and we talk about also our trauma, obviously, for our own therapeutic reasons. And I mean, before this, we talked about how wonderful, obviously, all of it is. And it's still wonderful. That hasn't been erased. But, after living there for so many years and then also wintering there for a couple years, it's been different and hard and not in the way that we expected, because we did live in the mountains of Colorado previously. So I feel like it was a very easy transition to Haines, Alaska. If anything, it was honest. I felt like we got more convenience.
Right, it's almost easier to be in Haines because of the town that was there.
We're like, we only have to go like 3 minutes to get to town. We were like shocked by this. Like, we could go back and forth to a grocery store and not like have to plan. Like, the first time we left, we brought water bottles. We brought like all our just basic stuff, always packed a backpack, And then we're like in town in like 3 minutes. We're like, wait a second, maybe we don't have to always bring everything.
Yeah.
Diapers, at the time.
Because it used to be a 40-minute drive to anywhere.
Yeah.
To like a gas station. Well, technically not a gas station, but it used to be a 40-minute drive to anywhere.
Yeah.
So you'd always have to be prepared and pack.
Yeah,
pack
it was down a mountain.
Pack for a day.
Yeah. So it was, we were, I felt frivolous in a way, living in Haines. But anyway, so we already lived, let's say, we'll call it off-grid, but it wasn't off-grid, in Colorado, in the mountains of Colorado. Faux mountains, Front Range. Anyway, Then we get to Alaska. This whole thing happens, yada, yada, yada. And we're going to be returning soon in around a month back home. And it's not really the question of like, why are we going back home? But it's kind of trying to figure out not just our own, any ambivalences that we have, but it's also trying to find out the real gold of why do we all live there? And I feel like I really need to take a private poll in Haines because, people are going to say the same thing of like, oh, it's magical. Oh, there's so much nature. Oh, it's this and that. And I feel like those are great. Those are the categories in which, the Haines guidebook is placed in the library. That's what it feels like. Oh, there's community, that you'll never find anywhere else. And all those are honestly really true. And that is the surface of, why we live there. But I think Steve said it really good, of course, right prior to this podcast. That's why we decided to record this. And so you want to talk about that?
Well, what did I say?
Can I set you up?
Yep, please.
Okay. So one of the things I always say is Haines is a, quote, saturation of the senses. And I feel that on all levels of that, you just basically are able to exist there. And so you were talking about...
Yeah, because one thing that we said right before this was, about Florida here, because I wanted to clear up this, like, for me, it annoys me that Florida is...
Well, it's expected.
Yeah, and it's expected, yeah. And that's what, it's like being down here. Everything around us is prepared by humans. It's like, when you say, I want to go out for a hike here in Florida, you say, oh, the county made a hiking trail over here. Let's go over there to that one. We'll see some alligators. It's,
Let me go pay to go to this park.
Yeah. Or yeah, what museum or zoo am I going to go to? So, life here evolves around, what's been made and what's available.
Yeah, through the hands of man.
Yeah.
Or human. I love that you call it human instead of man. That's so nice.
You're welcome.
You're such an Aquarian.
And so yeah, this doesn't feel natural. And so that's what brought me back to, Haines in Alaska, is it feels so natural. Like, it is, it's the trees, the snow, the mountains, the ocean, the sky. It feels like there's so much you can be natural there. You don't have to rely on anything that is provided for you, because you realize that, what is super giving about it, gives to your soul, is that nothing has been prepared for you. Well, prepared for you. It's already been prepared, by God, and so it is just basically,
that you are nature.
Yeah, you are nature. And just that realization that that's what you feel comfortable in, that just that level of comfortableness, compared to here. And obviously some people, feel uncomfortable being in that much nature, compared to being here all their life.
So true. That's so true.
And it's not like they need to be comfortable, like, oh, they'll just get used to it or anything. But it is, I think that's why we like it so much, is because, not because other people don't like it, but because it is such a saturation, like you were saying. It is such a...
Well, it's also chaos. And people are so, it's like Eckhart Tolle talks about, I love this part of where he's like, people go and they can't handle chaos. And chaos is, you go through a forest and there's all leaves all over the place, and there's just, or else you go to one of those, let's say, Asian gardens where everything is so pruned and organized and, fixed, and people feel more comfortable in that place rather than, this chaotic branches are down on the trail and, or whatever. There is no trail or whatever because it's chaos. It's natural state.
Mm-hmm.
And who says that's not organized except our mind, So that it brings that uncomfortableness because it's in such its natural state.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a good word of chaos, as far as.
And that's what cosmos means.
Right, yeah. Chaos, technically means, just not in arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean like chaos, like disaster. Yeah. If a lot of people hear, oh, things are in such chaos, yeah, it means like disaster, like I need to
organize
them. But chaos actually just means that there's a branch here by, the realm of possibilities of where that branch fell. It's here, not over there, and so
exactly.
Same with the leaves, and so, I don't know.
That's a good point.
That was just math mind here going for a second. But yeah, it's interesting how we are going to, since we've been away for 3 months now.
3 months.
How long has it been?
6 months.
Yeah,
it's going to be 6 months, yep. 3 months. It feels like just yesterday. We're still dealing with the trauma of our whole journey out here. Like that was almost just as traumatic. Like that was really hard for me. I'm still dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we found since we found a second home here, we found a comfortableness of being here. And
yeah, a resting place or a recharging place, I should say. Like literally, we're comparing it to batteries.
Yeah. And so we're giving ourselves the opportunity to go back to Haynes to re-experience everything that Haynes has to offer. And we almost need to go back as if we were in a fifth wheel again, like we're in a temporary housing situation, I guess. Well, I don't want to say that because that's our apartment was a temporary housing situation. But let's say we chose this house temporarily.
Through the house grace of our friends.
Yeah, the house that we're going to rent. So we chose this and we're choosing this. And so therefore we can re-look at everything and discover everything that was so beautiful and wonderful and soul enveloping about it. Because we didn't let ourselves be enveloped by anything when we were coming out of this trauma, because obviously we were being protective of ourselves.
Yeah.
We wanted everything organized and in the right place for a little while.
Yeah, we needed that. Yeah. We needed 100% hospitalization of our situation.
Yeah. That's a good word. Hospitalization of our
bright
situation.
Lights. People who knew what they were doing, doctor, the conventional medical treatment.
Wow. I'm just thinking in my mind as far as, are we going back to, like some...
We're going back to the shaman.
Yeah.
So we're going back to the, the medicine of, of nature. And yeah, there's a lot of ambivalence. There's a lot of, can I handle this? Because we've been in, the ICU for so long, 6 months, whatever that, whatever. Or maybe an outpatient, we'll call it an outpatient situation for 6 months. And it was healing and it's been great, but it is really, really, really scary to go back to something, or not even go back, but to revisit, the site of where this all started, but come with, a different perspective. You're still you. I'm still me. But there's this vulnerability and this childlike innocence of just showing up and wondering what's going to happen, because we're really at the mercy of, the moment of being able to just be there, and not have any expectation, meaning when we go back, there's no doing anything. There's no like, okay, we're going to move into this house, or we're going to do that, or we're going to have this in order. Like, we don't know what we're doing. There's no understand, like the mind. I shudder to say this because I don't want lower 48ers to hear this, and then especially my family, and then freak out, so just bypass this, forward skip this, because these are just my feelings and whatever. So I'm not responsible for other people's stuff. Anyway, the point is that in reality, in my own personal journey with this, there is so much vulnerability and not knowing. You think, a psychic knows something. We don't. All we do is align with, with the moment. That's what we're aligning, with infinite intelligence. So psychics don't know stuff. It's just literally we're messengers, and we get to either be messengers of our own life or messengers for another. And we're playing the same life game as every single other being, except what needs to show up in the, as a future, as a premonition. Then fine, it's going to show up. But whatever, it's just not important. The point is that there's a credible vulnerability of landing somewhere that is important for your soul. And I get lucky enough to share that with Steve, on the same, frequency. But to be able to show up and not because of anything. There's not a house here. We even have to fetch our own water. For people of Haynes, that's not a big deal, because you have a system. But when you're new and you're showing up and you're like, great, I have to fetch my own water, there's just this very much undercurrent of rumblings and uncertainty. And when you've gone through trauma, it's exceptionally triggering, or especially triggering. So there is a lot of ambivalence. But then there's also this constant that doesn't make any sense of a calling. And, so many people ask us, well, why go back? And we're trying to figure out how to put that in words. And I don't know if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know either. Meaning, like, we were trying to, as far as, it's just so natural and so, speaks to your soul, as far as, from a natural way. And it's all true. But, yeah, we started out, at 5:00 this morning saying, you just can't describe it, as far as what's there.
What would be words that you would think, just like one word? Like my thought was recognition. You
mean about going back to Haynes?
No, like what Haynes, why we're pulled there? Like, what are one words that go in, you relate with, of why you're there? Like mine would be recognition, another community, baseline. Those would be some of the words that I would say. Water.
natural. Yes, there's a lot of nature there, but it's natural as opposed to here.
Yeah. Just almost baptism, maybe, but not in a religious way. Union.
Freedom.
Sensation. Saturation. Expansion.
Yeah, stretching.
Yeah, like no limits. Even though it's funny, it actually is very controversial because there are limits. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of limits. But
again, those are they're almost the man-made limits.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I can't wait to go back to the cabin, just to feel like that whole universe.
But we haven't been able to get there. It's on this remote part of Haines. And it's this like shack, essentially. But we haven't been able to get there for several years because we have kids and it's highly, highly dangerous. But yeah, so those are the limits, the boundaries. Yet, it's all really within the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But it's realistic. It'll kill you. Like it's not. So you have to find your own way, your own creative way of what feels safe and intuitively intelligent, of when you go, when you don't go, all those factors, and you have to literally be, put your Alaska wetsuit on, of, tuning in.
At first I was wondering if you were still talking about the cabin or if you were talking about going to Alaska itself.
The cabin.
Mm-hmm.
But both.
Yeah, that's what I was just hearing it as. I mean, it's obviously a little bit different as far as, you need to physically put on a wetsuit in order to get to the cabin.
Yeah.
But you also need to put on, intuitively know when and why you're going to Alaska.
Yeah, you have to do it purposely. Alaska, that's why when people are like, "Oh, I'm coming to Alaska," I'm like, "Oh, go on a cruise." Have it, be prepared for you. And if you think about it, a lot of cruise, they don't get off of the cruise. It's like a container, like a little shipping container, and they dip their toes in the water by, getting off to each town or whatever, and probably visit shops and stuff like that, which is great because the best part about our shops that we have here is it's all Alaskan made, so they have really amazing stuff. But, some of them go on short little hikes and stuff like that, but they're still in their container, which is good. It's a good way to be able, it's a safe way, and I highly suggest it for most people. And all the other people are the ones who moved here. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's just kind of, you do everything here, or here meaning Alaska, on purpose. You don't, there's not really a chance factor. You're not that unprepared. You can't just go, as I always would say, most people are like, "Oh, that seems so relaxing." It's not really relaxing. It's extremely present, but it's not relaxing. You go out in nature and you're very, very present, meaning you have to be. You can't be in the mind. You can't be sitting there thinking about like an argument you had on Facebook. You have to be aware who's behind you, meaning what animal is behind you, what tracks are around you, what's that sound that just broke a branch. Everything. You're not sitting there being like, "Om," It is a very phenomenal practice of being present in a new awakened way. because usually very meditations and so forth, you're not really in the body. You're trying to expand yourself beyond the body. And here, and I think that's why I love it so much, meaning here in Alaska, that you will be very much, it's very much pulls you in the body. It has every sensation of keeping you awake. And that's for me so important because I find our greatest awakening or our greatest connection is actually being body centered, because a lot of times we're hovering above the body, especially in the lower 48. You're busy in the mind, you're thinking, you're not even here, and that can serve you. That actually isn't necessarily, if we don't label it good or bad, just if it serves us or not. But we do need, for even people in the lower 48, it's just like how inner city people, they need to go on hikes in nature. You need to connect, So, so many people think about Haines as like, oh, well, why live there when you need to go somewhere else to recharge? Well, it's the same thing of living in the city. You just might not know it, because you're so plugged in. And I don't mean that about being on grid. I just mean that of what you're plugged into on a daily basis. And so for Haines, it's the opposite. The conveniences are fantastic when we come at, when we get a chance to go to the lower 48. The other great thing is that you stop putting pressure on your place of primary residence. So that's another really good thing. And I think that's what a lot of people are discovering, especially after COVID. Don't you think?
It takes the pressure off of your primary residence.
Yeah. So like, for instance, a lot of times we think that we should just be we have this like thought, and also financial, financial thought, that what's safe and financially safe is to live in one place, because, hey, I don't want two mortgages. Hey, but what if you got creative in, whether you do trading houses with people or whatever it is, or had jobs that were remote that you could do that. Most people think that's great. Some people that really doesn't work for, and they discover that, and especially during COVID, they discovered that. So, but we're, what was I saying?
Takes the pressure off of primary residence.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like, instead of going and saying, oh, Haines needs a tennis court, Haines needs this, Haines needs that, even in your mind, even if you don't say it to, your community or whatever, you just take the pressure off. So it's like, I could then go down into town, which is the lower 48. I could go down, to conveniences, and I get my fill. Some people go down into the lower 48 and like, oh my gosh, I have a Starbucks. It doesn't mean we want Starbucks or anything like that. I don't drink coffee, but I love the local coffee shops, in Haines. I don't want big box stores. I didn't move. I don't want anything of those conveniences in Haines. That's why I live there. But it doesn't mean that you should not ever have those. It means that you have to find your balance of how to still, not chastise yourself for wanting those, but give fill your own need bucket, essentially, and stop putting so much pressure on your own community. So let's take whatever community you're in, let's say you live in New York City, instead of saying, I need a park right here, I have no space to walk my dog, da, 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 da. Well, great. You could start, figuring out your own community dog park, let's say, or stuff like that. Or you say, you know what? Every, summer, I'm going to make sure that I take a drive, I don't know, somewhere in Pennsylvania, that is has tons of dog fields that I could go and let my dog run around, whatever. So you just find ways, or like go to upstate New York, of that there's, places that you could camp and you could let your dog run around. I don't know if there is, but that kind of thing. So you meet your needs instead of having such requirements of your residence of being everything. You know what I'm saying? Instead of needing everything around you, you go and do more outreach and find ways to meet all your needs. It doesn't mean to sacrifice. I think a lot of people trip up on that, even in Alaska. Oh, well, I don't need this. Yeah, you might not need it 100%, but for your mental health, you might, So find your balance. And for us, our balance, which we did not know about that this was being what was required of us, of living two extreme different places, which was good because it balances each other out. It's extreme, wonderful warmth and healing and light and, and conveniences and all that kind of stuff. And then it's pure paradise of nature and nothingness, which is everythingness and,
Yeah.
nature's conveniences. So I just really, really highly encourage you to, whoever's listening, to find, if anybody, to find your own balance and how important and healthy that is. And trust me, if you knew our financial, well, you know some of them, but if you knew our financial woes, don't be scared of that. Like we all have the story of, well, I can't afford it. How in the hell am I going to make this work? That's not your job. That's the universe's job to figure that out. You have to do the dreaming. You have to figure out where's your heart, what would feel good, and stay in that place, not getting all the details, not figuring out the finances. That'll come naturally, and things just show up. Look at us. Look at this. Like, this was a pure miracle. And it wasn't something that we were like, yes, we want to do. I mean, we turned this down the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were so scared of like how to say yes to something that doesn't, but it was so in our lap of saying, please say yes. That's going to make me cry.
Yeah, please say yes.
And that's really uncomfortable when you're put in very uncomfortable position and fear and trauma of like, you just don't want it to happen again. So, but you have to chance that. You have to chance all of it, for peace right now. And you've found peace in this moment, We don't know. Everything is temporary. But I'm just so grateful, so abundantly grateful for all the helpers that have got us here, for all the continuous supporters that feel joy because of this, and that's contagious. And so I hope you feel the same joy in your life. And I wish you huge amounts of abundance and love and joy, just to find your own peace, because you're worth it. And your mental health is worth it. And you could still you don't have to have trauma. You could just be happy, and your mental health is still worth even more happiness. So,
yeah, you're almost giving yourself more freedom if you don't do it without the trauma part.
yeah.
So if you give yourself ultimate freedom
Now
to decide, not decide, but to explore, what do I want? What do I need? And not judge it. Like if you're in Alaska, say, yes, I actually really kind of do need to go to a Target right now.
yeah, and not judge
it. Or if you're, in New York, and you love the city, and you say, well, I kind of need to get away for a little while. Neither of those need to be judged, but just kind of wrap your heart around them and say, how does that feel? And again, just keep asking yourself, how does it feel? And, accept the temporary answer of whatever's given.
Yeah.
Because.
Yeah, show up.
Yeah, show up, exactly. And I think it'll lead you down paths that you never would explore.
Because other things show up for you.
Yeah, because other things show up for you. Like a secondary home for us, or, like just a new path as far as, doing winterings somewhere else.
And a job.
And a job too, yeah, that showed up for us. And the abundance of people that support us.
Yeah.
And that support everybody, and we support everybody. And so it opens up your eyes to the possibilities. That's our dream team message.
All right.
All right.
So, thank you for listening. Oh, this is still recording. Great.
Good.
I'm always worried it's not.
Let's repeat.
No, let's not. All right. Signing off.
Signing off.
Love you.
I love you too.